All right, Stephanie, thanks for joining. And I've been wanting to get you on the podcast here, and kind of timely. Did you happen to see Biden last night?
I sure did. That was a very powerful speech he gave on a lot of fronts.
Agreed, and finally some coherent, complete sentences.
Yes, and yes, a huge change from what we've been used to.
Yeah, and really, America is running on all cylinders. You wouldn't believe that with the disaster that was going on the past couple of years, that we would be leading the world with the vaccinations. The infections are down. It really is finally we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and getting through the tunnel finally.
Yes, no, I've been sheltering in place mainly because I could, and I know other people can't, and so I was doing what I could to try to keep the COVID infections from spreading. Plus, I didn't want to get it, and I finally feel like now I can, like today, went to IKEA. The first time I've really gone out just shopping for non-essentials in a year.
And how were people behaving?
Everybody was masked up still, and people were, they were actually behaving. They weren't, they were staying clear away from each other still, which we still need to do. Excuse me. We still need to do because, we're not through this, but I feel like that we're past the point of, I don't know how to, of dying from this if you happen to contract it.
Yeah, agreed.
So
earlier this week, I went up to Clayton, Georgia, because Mom is trying to relocate, possibly this year and retire. I'm from South Georgia, and Mom is still down there in Albany, but she's looking to relocate up to Clayton. And we still have Atlanta Metro and the rest of Georgia, and people are just walking around like it's a different world up there, and it's still concerning. But at least, like I said, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and it feels like we are finally getting, this behind us.
Well, that's one of my concerns is that these rural areas still aren't taking this seriously, and I think there's a lot of people that still don't even believe COVID's real. And my fear is that we're going to be able to, get areas like Metro Atlanta where they're safe, but people in these rural areas that's where it's going to continue to, thrive and potentially, change into something that's even worse.
Yeah. I work in IT, and we have coworkers around the world, Philippines, India, all over the world, and I happened to dial into a conference call late last night, and I interrupted a conversation with some coworkers in the Philippines, and unfortunately they are in a much worse situation than we are. And our company is everybody slow down, make sure you're taking care of each other, make sure you're make sure you're just being okay. And so it just goes back to who knew a year ago that we would be in this good of situation, but yet now the rest of the world is catching up with us. So we'll see where it goes.
Especially India. I mean, from my understanding, the situation in India is very dire right now, and not likely to get better anytime soon.
Yeah. But also, kind of to introduce you as well, who knew that during the speech that Biden would call out minorities? You had call-outs for women, Asians, transgender, queer people. He was literally checking all the boxes in the speech last night. We would have never heard anything like that from the prior administration.
Oh, and it would have been the exact opposite of that. The call-outs would have been to, can we hate on these people more?
Yeah.
And, hopefully that this administration is going to be able to do something about the, some of the scary white nationalism and stuff that's been that thrived during the previous administration.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know if you saw the articles up there about the goat killers, folks up in North Georgia near Rome, that they broke up some, white nationalist terrorist cell up there.
Oh dear, no.
Yeah, and they're up there doing animal sacrifices and just being weird. And that's my big fear still, is that, these Proud Boy type groups that I call them what they are, they're terrorist cells, are still, growing, and I fear we're gonna see something bad still from that.
Yeah, they're regrouping. I mean, you've got the documentary about QAnon. You've got, I interviewed Holly McCormick, who's running against Marjorie Taylor Greene up in that district recently, and I asked her, I said, how safe do you feel running against someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene? And she had to sit down with her family, her husband and her kids, and say, hey guys, this is not going to be safe. There are chances that she could rally her troops and come after us, just like Trump did.
No doubt. Oh, no doubt. And exactly just like Trump did. And I see things. I saw a video that, because you know how the algorithms are, they like throw stuff up in your news feeds or whatever. There was a video about, Jim Carrey calls out the Illuminati, and he was, it was a joke that, he was clearly doing it as a joke, and these people are like, yes, he was signaling all of us, and we know the real truth in Hollywood, that these folks are all like eating baby brains, and I'm reading this stuff and realizing that these people are serious.
Oh yeah.
And that's terrifying.
Mm-hmm. And it's one of the reasons that about a couple of years ago that I created this whole podcast, the whole Peach News Now, is to combat this. Because even leading up to the 2016 election, I had locked down my social media from my family. We didn't really talk politics within the family. And then when 2016, I said that we can't continue like this. If you continue to not speak your mind, to just let this stuff fester and just stick your head in the sand, it's just going to get worse.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I do call out some of my friends on when, when they're in a comfortable space where, maybe just the Trump-style politics don't directly affect them, that they get in this space of like, well, I don't want to talk about it. And it's like, that's some serious privilege when you can just disconnect yourself from politics, because you'll be fine no matter what happens.
Yep.
And I don't have that luxury.
Exactly. Yep.
And a lot of other people don't either. As we saw recently with the little, not little, but the murdering of Asian folks here in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And then we had a guy show up at a event we were hosting to talk about, talk with the Asian business owners to understand their concerns and what we as a city and what our police department and stuff can do to help protect, help keep them safe. And this guy shows up and starts talking about, we shouldn't be talking about hyphenated Americans, that Asian Americans aren't a real thing.
Oh dear.
And I'm just like, what is wrong with people?
It's just this whole rhetoric, this whole racism, dividing people, us versus them, and that's the product of what comes out of that.
So anyway, I'm probably not the person to be an expert on racial issues, although I do support, I let other people lead that, those efforts. But, yeah, we've got another election coming up in 2022 that we need to see if we can get an improved governor in Georgia, and see if we can flip some of these House seats, if not the whole House, and get them out of the majority party in our state.
Yeah, for sure. And I was looking over your bio just to dig a little bit more about yourself there. It looks like you moved to the Doraville area in 1985, so long-time Metro Atlanta resident. And like I mentioned, I'm from South Georgia. I moved to the Metro area in 2003. So it's hard to find a true native Metro Atlanta. Most everybody is from outside Metro Atlanta, but I think you're pretty close there.
No, I'm even closer than that. My family moved to Atlanta when I was 2. So I'm almost native. I mean, I consider myself a native because I don't remember anything but Atlanta. So yeah, we're pretty rare.
And so in your area, the old GM plant, which is now going to become a huge movie studio area, right?
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited that – go ahead.
And that's in the city of Doraville, right?
Yes, that is in the city limits of Doraville.
Gotcha.
And so we're really excited to have Gray Media, take over the site. And I just met with one of their key developer guys and reviewed the plans, and I am super excited what they're, like you said, they're movie studios, retail, a big park. They're going to be doing a lot of the site so it's filmable, so that they have different, kinds of streetscapes, so that these content producers don't have to go off site to create their content.
And I'm curious, in any of those discussions, did the whole, blockade of Georgia that supposedly, Hollywood was going to, blockade Georgia because of Senate Bill 202, did any of that come up in any of the discussions? I'm curious.
No, they don't seem concerned with this. And the people that they've actually got all of the studio space already committed to by other content creators besides them, and they need more space.
Yeah.
So I don't think, and I hope. I mean, if anybody from Hollywood is listening, boycotting Georgia is not how you fix this. This is how Hollywood, or quote Hollywood, leaving Georgia is what these rural senators want. They know that as content creators and artisans and, writers and directors and, all the people that are surround the movie industry come to Georgia, none of those people are Republicans. And they want to drive all of those people out of the state. And we need them to stay and fight with us, not to run away.
Yeah. Jen Jordan, who is my state senator here on the other side of town, and who recently announced she's going to run for attorney general. I like one of the quotes she said, "Okay, businesses of Georgia, you couldn't stop Senate Bill 202, so now you need to make sure that your employees are able to live with Senate Bill 202 and be able to vote under these new, draconian laws that the state is now, pushed down." So it's here, and it's going to be a fight. And to have people like hopefully Stacey Abrams, you got Reverend Warnock, that are going to be on the ticket together in 2022. It's going to be no shortage of action for sure.
No, I really think that that their actions are going to backfire. That all they've done is activate people, and what I've heard is people are like, I'll stand in line all day if I have to vote.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way.
Yeah. And it's nice to now live in a state where your vote actually means something.
For my whole life, my votes meant nothing until this last election. Yeah. And it really feels good that, I mean, there have been some local votes that mattered, but as far as national level stuff, my vote never was counted. And I really feel like that the work that the DeKalb Democrats did flipped the Senate.
Yeah.
Because DeKalb County delivered.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no question that these grassroots efforts all over the state, including like those areas, definitely delivered. And
but even like you said, and I don't want to discount. I know some folks that were, activating people up in Paulding County and all over the state, and all those votes counted. So it's not, it's Democrats all over the state working that also made this possible.
Yeah, for sure. But you also mentioned, local level, and over here in Cobb County, which is, I moved to Smyrna first in 2003, and then lived there a few years, and then moved over into unincorporated Cobb, where we've been since 2007. And the last couple of years, because you've seen Cobb County go from red to blue over these past couple of years, and it's happened at the commission level. You've seen the influence now on the school board in Cobb County. Traditionally, Marietta was pretty blue. You've got the separate school district there and the leadership there, but for all intents and purposes, Cobb County is blue. When you look at the entire county, the county has voted for Hillary Clinton. It voted for Biden. You've got the several countywide seats that are now Democratic. The sheriff is now Democratic as well. But what you saw then are now some pushes within the counties. People don't know that over here in Cobb County, where I live, for example, we are just in the county. You're not in a city. And people like to say, and real estate people, they will say, well, buy this because you get an Atlanta address. Okay, well, if you want to be bougie and have an Atlanta address, but you're technically in Cobb County, Georgia, and you just have a county commission, you just pay county taxes, and there are some pros and cons that I wanted to bounce off of you. But now that this is in the news, one of the pushes is an area called East Cobb. Now, East Cobb is a pretty rich part of the county. I mean, you've got multi-million. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the area, right?
Yes, but go ahead. I'm listening.
So, East Cobb, multi-million-dollar homes. You have sports stars that live over there. You've got old, rich money over there. It's predominantly, I'll say, white over in that area. And you have a pretty core Republican red contingent over there in East Cobb. And there seem to be several pushes and have been some past attempts to turn East Cobb into a city. And if I'm not mistaken, here in Georgia, now it looks like when you moved to Doraville, Doraville was already a city, right?
We're celebrating our 150th year anniversary this year.
Wow.
So Doraville has been a city for a long time, and Chamblee has been too.
Gotcha. And so over here, it's been the boondocks of Cobb County, and just the county over here in Cobb County. But now you've got these pushes. But I believe to be a city in Georgia, is it 3 services that city must serve?
I believe there is. I believe you're correct.
Gotcha.
It's been a while since I've looked up the rules on that, but I know Doraville has, like, we've got a police department, we've got a planning department, and those sorts of services. And so you have to be able to, because without it, you're to me a fake city. If you're not providing services, why do you exist?
Cough, cough, Sandy Springs and Dunwoody.
Well, Dunwoody does have their own police department, and so I think Sandy Springs does too. But yes, that's a different subject. But you've got a point that most of these cityhood things do seem to be focused around wealthy people wanting to keep the money close to home.
Right.
And Buckhead's doing the same thing. You've heard stirrings of them wanting to create a city of Buckhead. And it once again, it's a very affluent part of the city that's wanting to, basically take their money and keep it to themselves. I think there was something down near the city of Stonecrest, like with Eagles Landing or something,
mm-hmm.
that tried to go through. That was a very similar thing, and luckily the people voted it down. The thing that concerns me about some of these cityhood things is they only do the referendum for the area that the city is going to be, and they don't allow the folks that are in the unincorporated areas of that county that are going to be impacted by this to weigh in.
Yep.
And
it seems to be they draw a city of convenience to themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we've had the same thing bubble up over here several times with this Vista Grove, trying to create a city which would be one of the largest cities in Georgia, filling up the area like between Decatur and Tucker and like Doraville, Chamblee. That whole big chunk of unincorporated DeKalb County has tried to turn itself into a city several times. And, I will say that, areas like Tucker became a city. And to me, Tucker was always kind of a city. I mean, they had their little downtown area, and in another way, Dunwoody kind of made sense too. I wasn't as big a fan of Brookhaven because it felt more like the same thing of, wealthy folks wanting to create a city for themselves. But then again, there is, I do see the value in local control of things like zoning. And people that live there are going to be more attuned to what the folks that live around them would like to see their city become or not become. And I think that sometimes gets lost if the area is too big. So it's there's good and bad that goes with cityhood.
Yeah, and it's definitely not all a single thing. East Cobb, for example, the previous legislation back in 2019, the proposed services were police, fire, and community development. The latest version is now zoning, code enforcement, and parks and recreation. So how this boils down and affects us more specifically, I mentioned earlier, ironically, we're looking actually to relocate over to your side of town and possibly in the city of Tucker. We have some friends actually that since they've lived there, they became part of the city of Tucker. They've had a home over there, and we're looking to relocate. not, just I guess for full disclosure or whatever. But
Right.
but we had to fight this huge development behind us. I don't know if you heard of it, but this development behind us, they crammed all of this stuff onto about 20 acres of land, like 300 apartment units, a Kroger, a bank, a Chick-fil-A. It's way over sized. Even the zoning board in Cobb County said no, that this is way oversized, and people like Bob Ott and others on the county commission just overrode the zoning board and pushed it through. And people like there was a gentleman that ran for the Cobb Commission over here. He took a case all the way to the Georgia Supreme Court. He's not even an attorney, but he had the wherewithal and the patience to actually take that case all the way to the Georgia Supreme Court to fight Kroger for a tax break. And Kroger ended up winning anyway. So we've got this huge development that's still ongoing on this, that's way oversized. Galt Porter, one of the guys that's still on the Planning Commission, I remember him saying, he says, this is the definition of spot zoning. For this, but what you have with the recent history over here in Cobb County, when the Braves and the folks that did the Braves Stadium, when they got away with that, it was just kind of like the train that left the station. It's just wide open. And when sorry,
and that can quickly happen.
Yeah. And so what we've seen with these pushes for East Cobb Cityhood and these others, allegedly, again, I don't have all the details in front of me, is that the real estate developers, because it goes back to what I said earlier, East Cobb is a pretty rich part of town. There's a lot of pricey real estate around here. And you see when you follow the money that the real estate developers are trying to push for these cityhood, because you see with this latest legislation, zoning and code enforcement is one of the proposed services, so that they are able to get more friendly treatment should they want to go in and do development.
Yeah, you said the key word, I think, follow the money.
Yeah. And then soon after, when this East Cobb Cityhood bill gets introduced, allegedly now there's a city of Vinings that wants to become a city.
Goodness gracious.
And that's just as pricey real estate down in that area.
Right. So then how does the rest of Cobb County stay funded if all this tax revenue is going to these small cities that they've created?
Right. And so some of the proposals that are out there, you have something called franchise fees, which I had seen them on my cable bill, on telephone bills and things like that. I didn't fully understand what they were, but that's just money. It's basically a tax that goes back to, the cities and counties. That is one of the things. Yes. But some of these efforts to create these cities, they were going out to extremes of saying, well, we're not going to raise taxes. And I just laughed. I said, no. How can you stand there and add another layer of government and bureaucracy and claim that you're not going to raise everybody's taxes? Right.
No, I mean it's and then that's what you have to look at. Is there value in that? And for example, I feel in Doraville we have a really good police department here that's very responsive, stays on top of things. We have very little, other than just like car break-ins and, minor crimes, we have very little, things that would make you not feel safe to live here. And so that's part of the value that you get for living in the city of Doraville is you have more police presence than you would in unincorporated DeKalb County, where it might be cheaper to live. And then, people have to decide, am I willing to pay a little more money and we're not talking about, we're talking, a couple $100 a year kind of taxes difference between the two. And so, but it also depends on like what kind of, tax rate, and because one of the things that affects the way the tax is split between the county and the city is the intergovernmental agreements that the cities have with the counties, and who's providing police services, and who's providing fire services, and and health services. And if you're not doing any of that, and all you're doing is zoning, zoning, code enforcement, and recreation,
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be paying all your county taxes, and then the city on top of that. There's not going to be any discount on your county taxes for being in the city like there is in Doraville.
Yeah.
Because you can't, in Georgia, they don't allow you to be taxed for, or double taxed. Like the DeKalb County can't tax you on your property taxes for the police services when Doraville's providing it. So they don't allow for double taxation. And so, but if there is no duplication of services, and the city's just doing, like you said, those few little things, yeah, there's no way it's not going to increase your taxes.
Yeah. So we'll see how it plays out, and then something else that because there is a little Facebook group about this task force, weighing what ends up happening with this whole East Cobb thing. But something that I brought out, being from in IT, there have been for example, ransomware attacks that hit 22 Texas towns. If you're going to go in and create a whole nother level of bureaucracy, a whole nother IT department, a whole nother layer of government there, you have a whole nother possibility of something like this happening. And really, ultimately, it's not that necessary to create that whole extra layer of government just for that extra exposure.
No, and you make the point of that it's not cheap to run a city, and because you do have to have a planning department, you have to have the maintenance department, you've got to have like in Doraville, we've got a rec department, we've got a library, we've got a police department, we've got and at what point is that really necessary? I don't know. It's obviously, as somebody who is an elected official in the city, I see some value in what we're doing. But I'm not sure that things need to be sliced and diced up as much as some of these areas are. And we do have to be careful when you look at some of these cities that have been created, like the city of Stonecrest, and you've got the one of the people that was the big proponent of the cityhood ends up being the mayor, and then is now under, they're looking at him for his, alleged malfeasance with this COVID money, which, from what I've heard, looks pretty shady to me, that they're, handing money out to businesses, and then he's calling them up saying, hey, you need to give some of this back to this nonprofit marketing thing that my buddy created.
Cough, cough, Bob from Cobb County, but yeah.
No, but I mean, that's, if there is something to that, these people need to end up in jail.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's that good old boy system in Georgia.
But then, like, for example, here in Doraville, we got, with some of the COVID money that we got, we worked with the Latino Community Fund, and We Love Buford Highway, or We Love Blue High, and we have, having like 4 vaccination events here, trying to get non-English speaking folks that live in our city vaccinated. And we realized the value in getting more people vaccinated. And this was something that DeKalb County told us they just don't have the bandwidth or, the personnel to deal with non-English speaking folks at this point. And so, there can be value with cities if it's done correctly.
Yeah, agreed. So yeah, and that's why I wanted to have a podcast like this, because it's not something that is easily discussed in a sentence or even just one article. There's so many layers to it, and and I do appreciate you going into all these different angles that we've seen so far.
And another thing that we've seen with cities that they've been able to do that counties and the states don't seem to be able to get the grasp on yet is providing discrimination protection against anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people don't realize Georgia is one of 3 states that has no civil rights protections for anybody. And the only protections Georgians have is at the state level. I mean, not the state, but the federal level. And so if you're discriminated against, whether it's for being Jewish or a Muslim or being black or brown, whatever the case may be, your only recourse is to file a federal lawsuit. And Georgia courts don't even allow you to sue for damages in a discrimination case. And that's our state. But cities, and right now I think we're up to 14 cities now that have passed non-discrimination laws that at least in those areas, those little pockets of the state, folks have some recourse if they're discriminated against. So sometimes cities can be a little more nimble than, especially if you can get the right people elected, which surprisingly, Smyrna was able to put this together.
Yeah, agreed. And speaking of, if you do a Google search for the Georgia Constitution, I go out there and check every now and then. Our state still just has the 2013 final version that still has Brian Kemp, Secretary of State. They still have not updated it.
Wow.
And of course, it still has the verbiage, which has not been changed, that the definition of marriage is between a man and a woman.
Of course they haven't changed that. No, I mean, that's just the whole, and they act like they can just ignore things and get away with it. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, they do.
Yep. Maybe I'll try to bring that up again and point that out and see if they can change that. Because actually, there was about a year or two ago, when all the election debacle was going on, Kemp demoted himself for about a day or two because the Secretary of State website showed his name again for a couple of days, and then they quickly switched that back to Raffensperger. When they were all the election shenanigans. So I love our
Wow.
state. It's run so well. So.
No, I just no, and I'm really I was really disappointed when I saw the results of all of these Republican county committees meeting and these resolutions they all passed, not admitting that maybe we need to change our messaging, or maybe our policies aren't resonating with voters. Every one of them were stating that the election was stolen and we're still the majority. What can you...
Another response is say bless their hearts. So.
No, exactly. And So do you think we're going to see Trump in 2024?
So I've said it several times. Thank goodness he is not on Twitter anymore. I believe my blood pressure is better. I actually go back to my doctor tomorrow, and he'll retake the blood pressure. I feel like my blood pressure is lower, and America's blood pressure is lower, that he's not on Twitter anymore.
America's blood pressure is absolutely lower with him not being on Twitter.
Because you had all these reporters that's all they would do is just sit and wait for him to tweet again, and you don't have that anymore.
No. Well, and honestly, I blame a lot of what happened over the last 4 years on the media, and that they realized that they had a clickbait president that was just spoon-feeding them clickbait news. And they, I'm sure, were making a bunch of money reporting every little tweet that Trump threw out there because it was crazy world.
Yep.
And, the question I asked him multiple times was, at what point did the legal organ for the federal government become Twitter?
Yep.
And that all comms went through, went on social media. I mean, did Trump even talk to people, or did he just tweet everything out to the world as like, here's what y'all are supposed to be doing tomorrow?
Yeah. So, thankfully there's that. So we'll see. I think he's still fundraising, but they did raid Rudy Giuliani's house this week. Rudy Giuliani's apartment. He was not a homeowner, allegedly, to dig deeper into that. But Roger Stone's back out of jail, so they're still, conniving and figuring out what to do next. They got a lot of time on their hands, so we'll see what happens.
And for my own sanity, I've just I don't even look to see what he's up to, and I don't know if that's a mistake or whether, like I said, ignoring him maybe is that the best path for us to do.
Yeah.
And not give him any bandwidth.
Well, I do have a upcoming guest. It's a gentleman in our area. I have to go back and find his name, but he tells me he wrote a book about Trump's second term before, of course, he lost. And so we'll get his opinion. I've got a episode scheduled with him coming up, and we'll see what he has to say on it.
Will be interesting.
Yeah.
No, but I just, it's just seeing that speech last night was so refreshing that to see, like you said, somebody making complete sentences, and that people harass Biden for his occasional word slip when you had a president that, made up words.
Another thing I've said recently, Republicans don't do hypocrisy very well. So.
No. No, they don't. Well, is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I think that was pretty much, because I wanted to dig into that whole cityhood thing. It feels like over here in Cobb County, it keeps on coming up every couple of months, and they keep regrouping and trying to figure out how to rebrand it and bring it out another way. So it'll be interesting to see what the next face of it is.
And we've had the same thing with these Vista Grove people. They were actually able to put it all together, get a map drawn, get enough legislators to approve it going to a referendum, and it went up for a vote, and the residents pretty resoundingly said, no, we don't want to be a city. And now they're back again.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that, potentially the state legislature needs to work on, and I know there were some folks over here, Mary Margaret Oliver and some other folks over here in DeKalb County were looking at changing the the rules of the state law about like what does it take to even try to start one of these cityhood things? Because we're just getting worn out over here with these Vista Grove folks that I'm not sure they'll ever give up.
Yeah, and I'm looking at Vista Grove. That's the first I'd heard. It seems to be around the North Lake Mall area.
Right, and between there and the city of Atlanta.
Gotcha.
And he tell you, I mean, they wanted to go all the way north of 285 to to the Gwinnett County line, all the way down to the city of Atlanta.
Oh wow!
And that would be like, bordering up to Doraville, Chamblee, Brookhaven, Atlanta, and then Tucker, and then Decatur. And they were going to just fill that whole thing in as a new city.
Interesting.
And they didn't. And again, they're very similar to what you were talking about. They weren't interested in doing police services, or they just basically wanted money and power. And I'm sure the folks leading it were expecting to be the mayor and the city council.
Yeah, since Bob Ott over here in Cobb County he did not seek re-election, and then also you've got Lisa Cupid won the chairmanship. So you've got a couple of folks that were in power for a while over here that are looking for new jobs if they want to remain in power in Cobb. So it's been interesting to see what they're up to. So.
Right. Well, good luck with that over there. And it is. If I can say anything in closing is go vote. These municipal elections usually have a very low turnout, and your vote can make a huge difference. I was elected by 6 votes.
Oh, wow.
And if 6 people hadn't showed up, I wouldn't have ever gotten elected and been able to make the impact on the state that I've been able to make and made history. And so make plans to go vote this fall.
Yeah. So just to make sure I got the date right, there are municipal elections this fall?
Yes, there are municipal elections this fall, and they're in, I should know the date, but it should be the first Tuesday in November, just like all the other elections are.
Gotcha. Yeah, we'll put that on the calendar and be sure to talk about it for sure.
No, that would be good, because like I said, it's with these cities that do exist, we need to make sure that folks like Jason Leary and there's several other people that really are holding the state back, and it's where Republicans can get a stronghold in the state by running these small cities, and with through the zoning and these other things, they can have a large impact on people's lives for a good or a bad way, depending on who's in office.
Definitely, for sure.
Well, anyway, thanks for inviting me onto your show, and look forward to seeing what all else you bring out during the next year.
Yeah, for sure. And have a good rest of the weekend, and talk to you soon.
You too. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.